Shalom, Chevra, how are you? This morning I had a call, and I had a certain idea that I wanted to run by a friend of mine. And I didn't get too far when I realized that my buddy was so not going for this. And it was so interesting to me because he was really coming from a different perspective altogether. And it kind of made me stop in my tracks and just kind of realize, wait a second. This guy's got his own perspective. And I was not realizing that. We start Bamidbar this week. And we read the pasuk V'achanu b'nei Yisrael, that b'nei Yisrael encamped. Ish al machanehu, every person within their encampment. Ish al diglo, every man according to his flag. Every tribe had their flag, and every 3 tribes also had a flag. Letzivotam, according to their legion, as it were. It's interesting how much the pasuk stresses ish al machaneu v'ish al diglo letzivotam, as if to say each one of these is demarcating a certain instance, a certain flare that needs to be recognized. I think that speaks to this concept of a perspective, an understanding perspective. I'm reminded of the Gemara in Ketubot, when Hillel Hazaken, who was known as a poor individual, upon hearing about a certain nobleman who lost his money and was no longer living to the level of wealth he once had, on account of the verse in Dvarim, it says, Deimach Saro, somebody should give, we should give those that are lacking. And the question is what they are lacking in terms of their subjective position. So Hillel Zaken went out of his way to get a horse for this individual because he was used to riding a horse. And not only that, but he was used to having a servant run before him to clear the way, because this was a wealthy individual. And Hillel Zaken went out of his way to make the money, to give him a horse, to give him a servant. And it goes as far as saying one day Hillel Hazaken, this elderly man, didn't get enough money to have a servant run before him. He had the horse, but he didn't have the servant. So that day Hillel Hazaken ran 3 mil for this distance in front of this once poor wealthy man. This is the amount that Hillel Zaken went out of his way so that somebody else who was no longer living on their standard could maintain a certain level of perspective. I was calling up my friend earlier, and we were having a whole conversation about the right way to move forward now that the COVID virus seems to be subsiding, or at least the restrictions seem to be lifting up. And the angle I was going with, he wasn't ready for it. He didn't want to hear it, and he said, forget about it, Matt. And it really hit me. Wait a second. I need to realize where he's coming from. There's so much going on right now. Everybody is in a different place. And we have to be recognizing that of every individual. Where are they coming from? What is their comfort level? How can we move forward? And these are big questions. And there's not necessarily a particular right answer, and there's not a right answer for everybody. Because some people just can't be with their family anymore because they've been stuck with it. Because some people want to be with a family so badly because they haven't been with that. And it's not to say, well, you had a family, so and it's not to say, well, you didn't have a family around you. Those of us who had kids, we know how difficult it was. But what about the families that don't even have children? Yeah, that's also difficult for them. And what about the people who are single and they didn't have anybody to be with at all? Yeah, that's hard for them too. It doesn't make one right. It doesn't make one more hurtful than the other. We're all coming from a different perspective. We've all been affected by this virus on so many levels, in a different way, in a different perspective. Ishal Machaneu, Ishal Diglo, everybody's coming from such a different spot. As we move forward, and Baruch Hashem, it seems like we are slowly moving forward. Let's realize that everyone has their own way of looking at what's happening, and everybody is coming from a different perspective about what has happened. May we soon be davening together, regardless of our perspectives. B'simcha Rabbah and b'shalom. Shabbat Shalom.